Hello everyone and welcome back. With this session, we will talk about the logging, how to check log messages on Big IP, how to configure log messages to be sent to a remote server, how to deal with the log files locally on the Big IP device and stuff like that. So let's start. First, configuration option we need to look at is what type of user role can see the log messages. Log messages are uh, for troubleshooting usually, but sometimes log messages they contain information that you don't want anyone to see. So by default, only administrator, resource admin, and auditor are allowed to see the log files to check the log messages. For example, guest will not be able to see the log messages. So this is where you configure who can see the log messages. System logs configuration options. The accessibility of the log messages for different roles. Now, the level of logging. In the same page, options, if I go to the Big IB, we go to System, Logs, Configuration, Options. So this is where you define who can see the logging, and then this is where you define the level of logging for each process within the LTM, the local traffic manager. So there are 8 levels from emergency, alert, critical error, warning, notice, info, and debug. This is the default configuration for each process. Now, emergency, the verbosity of the emergency is minimum, means it does not, if you come, for example, to HTTP and say emergency, the level is emergency, means the HTTP process will not generate a log messages a lot. It will generate very minimum log messages. So many things might happen with the HTTP process, but it will not log a message. It will not send a log message. It will only send a log message for something emergency. Very, very, very critical. So usually we don't put anything for emergency, because if you put emergency, you will be missing important messages. You can configure it for alert. The verbosity will be low, means it will send a little bit more messages than the emergency. It will tell you about the serious errors that for sure require administrator intervention. So, for example, if we come to the network and configure it alert, it will not send a lot of messages. It will send only for serious errors. Critical, it will send more than alert. It will tell us about critical errors. Error, it will send a message for every error. Means it will log a message for every error. And 3 of them, alert, critical error, are low verbosity. Means not a lot of log messages. Not a lot. Warning level, if I set any process to warning level, it will send all errors, critical, alert, emergency. So any log level, it will include the previous logs. So emergency, it will send only emergency system panic messages. Alert, it will send the emergency and alert. Critical, it will send critical, alert, and emergency messages. Error, it will send all critical, alert, emergency. Warning, it will send error, critical, alert, and emergency. Usually the warning is the minimum that we should go for, so that we don't miss important messages. So warning, it will contain errors, and it will contain also some messages that the Big IB suggests for the administrator to review such messages. So maybe, for example, you have a threshold of 100, but the system reached 75%. So it will send a warning. So that is good for the administrator to review so that the administrator can take proactive action. Notice it will send more messages. You see that the verbosity is medium. Info, it will send informational messages, not errors, not warnings. Maybe the process is doing something, it will send you informational. So the verbosity is high here for the info. Debug, it will it will send a log messages for everything. For every simple action being done by the process, there will be a log message. And usually we never configure any process for debug unless you have a support case with Big IB, with F5 support, and they ask you to enable debug and send them the output. That's the only time we go for debug. We don't go for debug for our own operations. It's only when asked by the vendor. The first type or the first category of log messages is related to LTM objects. So pool, monitor, node, virtual server. When there is any change on any object, if we go to, let me show you, if we go to logs, local traffic, this is where you see the changes. Now let me open a new tab and show you something. Let's go to the nodes. So we have a node that is triggered down by monitor. So let's remove the monitor on this node and say update. So we have done one change on one node. Let's see the log message. You see at the end. Let's change that, sort it out by time so we see the most recent on top. Node 82 monitor status unchecked. The node was down for certain amount of hours because of the monitor, but now the monitor has been removed from the node. So under the local traffic, you will see all the changes that are happening on the nodes, members, pool members, virtual server, any object. So maybe you come to node 1 and say disable. So you see that node 1 status disabled. Let's re-enable. Enabled. Let me power up one node quickly. So we have server 3 up and running. Let's see under the pool. Pool is green now. So we have at least one member up, which is node 3. Let's see what type of log messages we have seen. There you go. So we see node 3 is up. Virtual server became available. Virtual server, and the pool is up. So you see this kind of log messages you see under the local traffic, anything related to the LTM objects, status change, up, down, disable, etc. Now, This is the service, or this is the process that is generating the log. This is the status code or the log message code, and this is the level. Now, you may ask yourself when we talked about the level, but how do I know? Should I put error or critical or warning? What type of messages under the critical? What type of messages error? And what type of messages warning? So that I can take a decision to which level. This is where you can see the level of the log messages. So you can see that virtual server up, node up is notice. So you wouldn't want to miss such a log messages. So you have it configured as a notice. If you see the MCP is notice, and the log message says this is the MCP, this is the notice. If we change the MCP to warning and click update, now we will start to miss such type of log messages. So let's go back to the node and node 1. Let's disable both of them. Let's see what type of log messages we will have. No log messages. Why? Because member up, member down, member disabled, member enabled is notice level, and we did change the log level for the MCP. So we have to go to the MCP, bring it back to notice, update, go back to the local traffic, and let's enable the nodes or the pool members again. Now we should see up. Now we should see that node 1 and 3 status enabled. So by checking the different log messages, log level, and what is the service, you will be able to define how to change these if required. Usually the default, this is sufficient and good enough. But if you would like to dig more into the details, this is how you do it. So process and level, you can always extract this information from the log messages. Now, so as we said, LTM, the local traffic tab, this is for LTM object, member up, member down, etc. Changes on the existing objects. The last section of the page, if we go back to options, MCP and TMSH enable, logging, audit logging enable. Audit logging is related to administrative action, administrative changes. We log the changes that are being done by the admin. Now we are on the configuration utility, and we go to LTM, we go to pool list, we create a pool. So this is an administrative action, test 111, finish, just like this, without members, without anything. Now if I go to logs, to the audit tab, let's sort it out by the recent. You see that there is a log message says user admin create a pool name test 111. So this is under the audit list tab. This is where you see the administrative actions, the administrative changes. Now you see that under the local traffic, you don't see like creating a pool. Why? Because this is only for changes. Now, if I go back to the pool, our pool, and I disable node 3, now for sure I will see it here, node 3 disabled, but also you will see it here under the audit list. These log messages, we are seeing it because we enabled the audit logging for the configuration utility and for TMSH. So we enabled the audit logging for both, for the MCP, the configuration utility that we are using. This is the configuration utility for the big IB, and for the TMSH as well. So the reason we are seeing log messages here is because by default, audit logging is enabled. If you don't want to see, you can disable. Click update. Now, go back to the audit log. Let's create another pool. So we have another pool. Any log message? No. Any log message? No. For the pool test 2222222. Nothing. Let's go back and enable it again. So for MCP enable, let's go back and delete both pools. Let's go back to the audit list. Yes, you can see that there is a delete for two pools. So whether you want to see a log messages for administrative changes, configuration changes or not, is controlled by audit logging section for the configuration utility and for the TMSH commands as well. So even if you go to the command line and disable a pool member or enable pool member, create pool or delete pool, this will also be logged. Log files are the actual storage for the log messages that we are seeing on the GUI. So on the GUI, when we see those log messages presented here, they are actually stored in files on the big IB. For LTM, for all the log messages that we see here under the local traffic tab, they're actually stored in a file called LTM under the directory var log. We can have a look at that. cd/var/log. You can say ls and you will see that there is an LTM file. So you can say use the command less LTM. So you can see it's actually the same log messages that we see on the GUI. Look at the last one, node 3, 83. That's it, that we enabled it. So what we actually see on the GUI is stored in the file called LTM. Now you can use the TMSH command instead of the Linux. So if we go to TMSH, you can say show/sys log LTM. But this command alone will show me all the log messages. What you can do is you can use filters, you can use log range, you can use the log range. So you want to see from now back 2 days, or you want to see specific date, or you want to see this date from 8 to 9. So you can specify hours as well. Less command is a Linux command. Now you can actually see the real time as the logging process writing on the file. So if I go back and say tail minus f ltm, so the session has opened a real time monitor on the LTM file. So if I go to the pig and we do some change, let's go to the pool and disable node 3 again. Disable. So we should see log message here. Disable node 3. But at the same time, you see that the log message has been written to the file. So we see the log messages in real time as they are written on the file. Let's go back and enable. You see status is enabled. So tail minus F, Control C to break, tail minus F to see real-time log messages being written. This is usually we use it when we are troubleshooting certain case, or maybe during testing some cases. You can use the less command as well with minus F as well to see real time what is being written on the LTM file. They both actually work. Now the log rotation, if you noticed on the ls, when we say ls command, there are two files actually. There is LTM and there is LTM.1. What is LTM and LTM.1? LTM is the current file. We have seen when we said tail minus F that the logging process is currently writing to this file. So as we go on with the day, more actions happening on the LTM, the logging process will continue to write on this log file. Now, there are two conditions that this log file will be archived and we open a new file. So LTM.1 is actually an archived log file. So if we say less LTM.1, let's see what is there in LTM.1. You see back 2-3 days, the log messages of the previous 2-3 days. So 29, 30, 31st, then the first, it's actually up to 31st. So this is an archived log file. So the LTM will not continue to write on the same file indefinitely. No, there are two limits. Either the file reach the size of 100 meg. So if we have a lot of log messages, so the size of the file will reach 100 meg, then the big IB will archive it, will name it LTM.2 and open a new file. So LTM is always the current file that we write log messages to. LTM.1, LTM.2, LTM.3, these are archived. They contain log messages from previous days, from previous period. So if the file reaches 100 meg, we will rotate the file, open a new file, or on a weekly basis. Even if we go for a week and the size is not 100 meg, we will also rotate the file. So there are two conditions. Either we reach 100 meg or a week, 7 days pass, then we will archive the log file. We will open a new log file. How many previous log files we keep? 10. Rotate 10. So you would see LTM.1, LTM.2, LTM.3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We will not continue 11, 12. No, it's not indefinite. It's capped. The maximum, we keep the latest 10 files. So the latest 10 files may be, they contain the latest 7 weeks, or the latest 7 files that are of a size of 100 meg. Now, you can change this. You can say, I want to rotate 20, or I want the size 200. How you change it? You change the configuration file, the logrotate.conf file. This is a Linux file, so you can edit the file up to your requirement. So this is all for the local logging. Next is remote logging. So local is on the appliance. It's good for if you're looking quickly for one log message, if you want to see something happened like 2 minutes ago, a few minutes ago, that's just fine. But for long-term log storage, if you wanna do some search, you organize the logs, you archive the logs, keep them for like 1 year, 2 years, etc., depending on the regulations. This is where you need to send the log messages to a remote log server. Usually, within every organization, there should be a syslog server. So we have to configure the big IB to send the logging to a remote log server where we have enough storage uh, to keep the log messages for like 1 year, 2 years, etc. To configure remote log server, syslog server, we have to go to configuration, remote logging. Put the IP address of the server. I have 10.00.51 configured as a syslog. Now, if you want to source the logging from a specific interface, specific IP, you can. Otherwise, it will consider the routing table. So when you say send the logs to this IP, the big IP will check the routing table and see how to reach this. If it's from the inside, then we source the traffic from the inside IP. If it's from the outside, we source the traffic from the outside. So it will go back to the routing table if we do not specify local IP. Let's add. Let's click update. Now log messages are being sent to the remote syslog server. Let's turn on the server quickly. Let me open the syslog. This is a free syslog server. Second. As you can see, the big IB is sending log messages. Let's do one thing. Let's go to the big IB. Let's go to the pools. We created some test pools. Let's delete them. Go back to the syslog server. You can see that. Oh, let me stop the logging. Disable the card for a second to stop receiving log messages. So you see that user admin delete the pools. So the same log messages we used to see here. Now we are no longer seeing them here. We see them on the remote syslog. What I wanted to show you now, one more thing I wanted to show you for the remote logging. So once you configure the server, the remote logging server, syslog server, and maybe you're checking on the server, you see no log messages, so you're not sure what's the problem. To check and verify from the big IB side, first let's try to figure out where the packets are exiting, which interface, and we check is the big IB generating and sending the log messages toward the syslog server. We go to the command line and we use the TCP dump command. So we tell the big IB TCP dump interface 0.0 all interfaces. I care about the traffic destination port 514. So because I don't know which interface, if you know the interface, you can specify the interface. So let's see, and we can see that the big IB is sending the source IP is being 10.0.0.1, the inside IP, destination is so the server we configured on the port syslog. Now, another command that if you want to send a syslog message, you can use the command logger. So once you send the command, you can see on the local, you see that there are tests, the ones that we are sending from the command line. I want to send test 22. You can see that the test message. You will see also the same test message. You should see it on the syslog server. Somewhere, yeah, this one. So logger command is good to send a test log message. TCP dump to see that the big IB is generating syslog messages sending toward the syslog server.